Hi, welcome to update number 16 on the Lackawanna Cut-Off. Amtrak, the waiting begins. Hi, I'm Chuck Walsh, and there's been a lot of activity in the last couple of days here towards the end of late March in 2023. We're going to go over all of that. Amtrak, and also there's stuff going on, still going on at Andover and Roseville Tunnel. But first we're going to talk about Amtrak. And going back to our previous update where we asked you folks to write letters to Governor Murphy, had the desired effect. Things have, I'll say, come around. Essentially the idea was to get New Jersey Transit on board with the Amtrak study and the Amtrak application through FRA, the Federal Railroad Administration, and that has happened. So let's go through the process of what's going to happen over the next few months, not only what is happening in the last few days. The process for approval, where you get all the money and you can build or rebuild the cutoff, is really a 5-step process. Now the FRA only defines 3 steps, but I'm going to go through 5 steps because actually there really are 5 steps. The first step, which I'll call step 0, is the application process. And as I speak, as we record this, which is a Friday before March 27th, which is a Monday, which is the deadline for the application. We haven't heard that the application for the Scranton, New York City service has gone in to the FRA yet. We expect it'll go in before the deadline, which is on Monday at 5 p.m. But that application is not going to be sponsored or co-applied, if you will, by the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, that's PENNDOT, but also the Pennsylvania Northeast Regional Railroad Authority, and also New Jersey Transit. So New Jersey Transit has come on board, which was late in the game, but they have come on board. So that's extremely important to the whole process. Now, once that application is in, then the waiting begins. That's what I've been talking about. Now, how long of a wait do we have until we know when step 1 begins, which is when basically a particular corridor, and there are going to be numerous corridors throughout the United States, they're going to be applying for the billions of dollars in funding out of the infrastructure bill from 2021. But what's going to happen is that in the particular case of Scranton, New York City, Scranton, once that application is in, the FRA will start a review of that application, once again, plus a number of others. Now, originally we were told that the deadline for FRA coming out with their short list, or their priority list of designated corridors that will be eligible for future funding, that was going to happen on May 23rd. More recently, they've announced that that's been pushed back sometime what they call late summer, which I interpret that to mean somewhere around Labor Day or shortly thereafter. Now, the FRA has gotten quite a bit of flack about that because here are all these billions of dollars sitting on the table, so to speak, and we're going through this arduous process. As I said, we're only literally at this point at step 0, but once we get to step 1, whenever that is, either the end of the summer, or maybe they change that, we don't know, but hopefully it's certainly no later than, let's say, Labor Day, that whatever corridors at that point are picked, and we're hoping that Scranton will be picked amongst them, that short list of corridors, I don't think it's going to be a long one, but we'll see, they then will receive $500,000 in funding, a grant, and they can use that for their purposes. But the step 1 is really intended for an individual corridor to put its team together. Well, at this point, the Scranton corridor really has a team, so they might actually be eligible to move to step 2. Now, what's step 2? Well, you're going to be hearing a lot about what happens in step 2, and that's what they call the development of a service development plan, SDP. Now, the SDP is basically a game plan, if you will, for want of a better term, for the running of service. But to run the service, you got to come up with all the things that need to be done to be able to run the service, not the least of which is money, of course. That's going to be a key element to that. But you have to have all the engineering, you have to have the information in terms of what your schedules or proposed schedules might be. Now, it just so happens within the last couple of days, in fact on March 22nd, Amtrak released its long-awaited study, actually 2 years about in the making, with the Pennsylvania Northeast Regional Railroad Authority, which goes through all of that. So, in a sense, the Scranton corridor already has at least the shell, or at least a lot of the information that they would need for a service development plan. Now, exactly how that'll work in this particular case, don't know, but presumably that's going to become an integral part of that particular plan. Now, once you've put together your service development plan, including the funding, that's going to be a key thing, you are able to move on, potentially, this is up to FRA, I'm not exactly sure how this is going to work, but the FRA can move you in what they call step 3. Now, step 3 is where the real, I'll say the real important stuff happens. Everything's important up until that point, but in step 3 is when you'll be doing what they call final engineering, and, well, at the very end, when you go to step 4, that's when you actually start to run service. So, but that's not exactly, a defined step or process as to how exactly that's going to work. All we know is that at the very end, you end up running trains, but you have to get the funding, and of course you have to, in this particular case, do a lot of rebuilding. Now, one of the things we've been told, and I heard this specifically from New Jersey Transit myself, I've heard it twice. I was at a meeting on February 24th and March the 16th. March 16th was actually in Blairstown. And they said that New Jersey Transit wants a $2 million study on top of everything that's already been done for this particular corridor. Now, the question is, well, what would they want to study? Because essentially, the entire corridor has been studied, and much of it doesn't need study because it's already in operation. Certainly, everything from New York until Port Morris, which is the beginning of the cutoff, isn't going to need studying because, well, that's an operating line. Other than knowing exactly how to slot the individual trains, which they did in the AMTRAK'S study, so that's not really an issue. From Port Morris to Andover, well, that's under construction, so we don't need to study that. From here, Slateford, which is just down the road a piece from here, all the way to Scranton, well, that doesn't need to be studied because Amtrak just studied that. That's part of the study that was just released on March 22nd. So what's left to study that New Jersey Transit wants to study? And, well, that's basically the 20, give or take, miles from Slateford Junction back to Andover. Now, this bridge here, by the way, well, New Jersey Transit doesn't own the cutoff, but this bridge here is owned by the state of Pennsylvania, or specifically the Pennsylvania Northeast Regional Railroad Authority. So this part wouldn't be part of what New Jersey Transit wants to study. So we're a little puzzled exactly what New Jersey Transit is up to about restudying what has already been studied. So that will be coming out. I mean, we'll be talking about that more because it is a potential issue, but needless to say, the entire corridor has been studied. It's been studied several times. Now, in terms of where do we go from here, what are we going to be hearing about over the next few months? We don't know we're going to hear much of anything actually from the FRA, but maybe there may be some feedback, but we don't know. We don't know exactly how that's going to play out. Now, as all this has been going on, of course, Andover, they've been clearing the right-of-way at Andover. And we're going to cover that in a different update, probably update number 17. We're not going to really go into it here, but that project is going forward. They've put up no trespassing signs at the tunnel, so we expect that tunnel work at Roseville Tunnel is imminent, certainly. And that's good news. We'd like to see that move forward, of course. But all this together is happening. Now, there are some interesting details, talking about the AMTRAK'S study, there's some interesting details in there about the service and what is planned. Granted, things can be tweaked over time, but for example, they are proposing that the Tobyhanna stop, and that's in Pennsylvania, and the Summit stop in New Jersey would be eliminated. Now they're actually proposing to run trains from New York to Scranton or Scranton to New York in 2 hours and 50 minutes. That would be the fastest run on the Lackawanna between those 2 points. Granted, in the old days it was from Scranton to Hoboken or Hoboken to Scranton, but New York is actually 3 miles longer. The fastest previous train was the Merchants Express, which was for a while was known as the Rocket, and that went as fast as 2 hours and 55 minutes, but that was back in the 1930s, and that was a steam-powered train that made a bunch of stops in the Poconos. But anyway, getting back to 2023, in terms of Amtrak, they are proposing 2 hours and 50 minutes, 3 trains in each direction. At least in the beginning, if they add more trains, certainly, but at least in the beginning, if they hold to more or less what they're schedule that they're proposing in the study, you may be able to commute back and forth. If you're going into New York, for example, you could see an afternoon ball game, but you wouldn't be able to see a night game, just the way the schedule runs. You wouldn't be able to see a Broadway show, but unless it were a matinee, then you'd be able to do that. Early dinner, that type of thing. This is the beginning. We should be very happy with what is being proposed. Is it ideal? Would it be nice to have hourly service? Well, yeah, that would be great, but that's not in the offing at this point, certainly. So, everything considered, let's be happy that this is moving along. 5 years ago, we'd have thought this was a pipe dream, where we are right now. So, that's kind of where we are. We'll be doing more updates as there is information to convey. Once again, I think it will probably be about Andover and Roseville Tunnel rather than Amtrak, but you never know. At least until sometime in the summertime, whenever FRA decides to make an announcement about this. And certainly we'll wait with bated breath about that. But yep, that's what the waiting will be for. So, thank you for tuning in, and certainly look forward to the next update on the Lackawanna Cut-Off.